On this episode of Live Open Daily, Meta CTO Andrew Bosworth confirms that there will not be a Meta Gaming Showcase this year. That's a big bummer. He also, for some reason, decides to defend the default cloth strap on the Meta Quest 3. Yeah. I'm your host, Live Open Mike. Live Open Daily comes to you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms. We're on YouTube, YouTube Music, Spotify, iHeart, and Apple Podcasts, so you can get the pod wherever you prefer. So Andrew Bosworth, Meta CTO, the Chief Technical Officer, every month on his Instagram account doesn't ask me anything, where he takes questions from fans and gives pretty open responses about a lot of things. Some of it is corporate speak, and a lot of stuff covers like Meta Ray-Bans and stuff he does on vacation. I'm not going to touch any of that. I'm just going to stick to the stuff that is specific to VR and right now Meta Quest 3. All the video and audio you see here are from his Instagram account. It's at Boztank, Boztank, so all credit go to that. We'll have the video version up if you're watching the video, otherwise you will get the full audio. The first question is about the Meta Quest Gaming Showcase.
Love your enthusiasm for the gaming showcase. We love that event as well. We don't do it every year. We kind of do it when, we have the cycles, honestly. And in years that we have big launches and things going on, we often don't. We tend to put that energy into other places. So we got a big fall coming up. We're excited about Connect. We got to get back in the showcase train, but we don't do it every year.
Okay, so this is kind of BS because they've done it the last 3 years in a row. The first Meta Gaming Showcase was in 2021. They did in 2021, 22, and 23. So saying that they don't do it every year when you've done it for the last 3 years is a bit disingenuous. Meta Connect this year is actually a little bit earlier. Usually it's in October, or for the last few years it's been in October. This year is September 25th and 26th. And prior to the gaming showcase, they will always showcase a game or two. This year, it feels like they opted to go a different route because they did have the Batman Arkham Shadows trailer at the Summer Game Fest. That's a Jeff Keighley show. That reached a much wider audience than the Meta Gaming Showcase obviously reaches. But it stinks because there are not a lot of gaming showcases that are VR specific. There's the two that Upload VR do every year. One in summer, one in winter. The one in summer is coming up actually on June 26th, so about a week after this podcast goes out. And there's usually a couple dotted throughout the year from SideQuest. This is the market leader in VR gaming, so for them to do just one trailer on a different showcase full of a whole bunch of flat screen games, and so Batman Arkham Shadows didn't really stand out, it kind of stinks. This is something that it felt like they were doing like fan service by showcasing a whole ton of games over the course of like anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. So the fact that they're not doing one this year is a bit of a bummer. But also because Batman is already out there, it may be that some of the other studios that they own don't have a game ready to go yet. And with Behemoth already having a trailer out, Metro already having a trailer out, it feels like the fall and winter seasons already lined up with big games. So I guess they felt like they didn't have to do a showcase. So it still stinks. I hate it, and I hope it comes back next year. Next note is about eye tracking. The exact question is, when do you think eye tracking will be standard in VR headsets? This is his response.
I think we're headed that direction as a platform, as an industry. Right now there's a lot of trade-offs that come with eye tracking in terms of cost, in terms of compute, in terms of architecture, and we're working on systems and methods for making it cheaper and making it fit into more architectures and accommodating it more and making it more accurate. One thing that's interesting with eye tracking is it's not... mixed reality is a part of the platform. If you don't have it, there's a bunch of functionality that's not available to you, and there's no way to like simulate it because it's like your interface with the physical world around you. Whereas with eye tracking, there are usually workarounds that do work, and so you can simulate it in social situations. You can use a different input methodology, and so we believe in it. We're working on it. We're advancing it, but it's also like it is a feature that we don't want to bring to the platform until we think it's ready for everybody and worth the cost architecturally, financially, and thermally.
I am perfectly fine with this answer. I will die on the hill that Quest 3 should not have had eye tracking. I did a whole video on this very subject on the YouTube channel last year before Quest 3 even came out, and I stand by everything I said in that video. Bosworth even says it here. Some of it is cost related because the eye tracking module actually costs extra money. It costs like $200 something to add it on to like a Vive headset, for instance. There's also more compute associated with that. Since Quest is a mobile headset, they need as much CPU overhead as they can get. So if you're having to process eye tracking for things like dynamic foveated rendering and for eye tracking in like social VR apps, then that's going to take away from the CPU's horsepower to do other things. And while the XR2 Gen 2 is a pretty more powerful chip than what's in the Quest 2, it still is not going to be able to do all of that quite yet. He also talked about thermals and other things like the headset running hot. But the main thing is, and this is the last thing he said, that it's not ready for general use. We did the previous episode specifically covering the developer Mixed Realms who made Hellsweeper and their whole journey into getting eye track dynamic foveated rendering into the PlayStation VR2 version of Hellsweeper. There's also been other discussions with other developers who either had to move to Unreal 5 or a different version of Unity to be able to utilize eye tracking for stuff like dynamic foveated rendering. So you couple that with looking at like PlayStation VR 2 sales and the fact that it's not particularly doing well, and less than half of the games on that system use any eye tracking in any meaningful way. A lot of them aren't using eye track dynamic foveated rendering. They're not even using eye tracking for stuff like menu navigation. But people looked at the Apple Vision Pro and said, we need eye tracking for everything. That's a $3,500 headset. Just one lens in that headset costs more than the entire Quest 3's build. So for Meta to want to keep the Quest as like the value consumer line version of the headset, I just think it wasn't really there. So I agree with everything he said here. I do think it will be ubiquitous moving forward. It will be on Quest 4. It will be on every other Pro headset they ever come out with if they make another Pro headset. But for right now, for Quest 3, it didn't make sense. I totally agree with this. Next question, any thoughts on using Apple's concept of an external battery would make the Quest smaller? Here's his response.
You know, I'm just not a fan of the wire, is the answer. I think that wire sucks. I'm just gonna say it. It's like, I really, really dislike it. Of course, you've looked at what we call two-part systems, two-part architectures. You know, and you can offload more than just the battery. You can offload some of the compute and you get more thermal space. The fact that they just did the battery suggests that they actually would like to have it all in one piece. They just couldn't do it with the weight. They were already too heavy. So they had to offload something that's kind of simple. But I really, really hate that wire.
Another executive at Meta, Mark Rapkin, said specifically when they're talking about the wire and the offloading compute to the battery for the Apple Vision Pro, he said straight up, you never forget the wire. Wires don't really bother me when it comes to my gaming because I can usually loop that thing behind me. But in terms of like walking around and using this for everyday use, he's right. The wire is something that you're going to end up noticing. Most people at this point don't even use wired headphones anymore if they're using Bluetooth headphones because that wire is something that always bothers them. Now add a thicker wire to that and a very heavy brick in your pocket, in addition to your phone, your wallet, everything else, it makes sense. The battery in the Quest 3 is one of the heaviest components in it, so it would make it a good deal lighter. Most people don't know this because they think the Quest 3 is lighter than the Quest 2. It's not, it's 5 grams heavier, and most of that is due to the fact that the battery is considerably heavier. It's just thinner because of the pancake lenses, so it feels closer to your face and it's more comfortable, but it is a heavier headset. Maybe this is something they revisit down the line, I'm not sure, but for the most part, it seems like Meta's kind of dug in on this because this is now 3 executives, Mark Zuckerberg, Andrew Bosworth, and Mark Rapkin, who all said they hate the wire. So don't expect to see that on a later Quest headset. Next question, will we ever be able to have Meta AI as an assistant for the Quest headset, similar to what they did in their Meta Ray-Bans? Here's his answer.
Yeah, at some point you will. One kind of the funny things is, you think about the Ray-Ban Meta glasses that have the assistant. It's been trained to be able to understand the world around it through the camera. So you have to give the virtual assistant virtual access to the virtual camera of what it's seeing and train it on what it'll see in there, which is actually very different than what you see in the world. So actually it's a training data and a training set that we have to develop for that and make it useful in that context. But yeah, I think this is something that at some point you'll be able to expect, yeah.
So basically what he's saying is that they can't dump their new Meta AI, the same one that's in the Ray-Ban glasses, into the Quest headset because there's a whole different set of like software things they have to do with that. When AI became a bigger thing in the last year or so, people were thinking, oh, you just add ChatGPT to everything, and there's software implications to that. My friend Marty Do VR can probably speak to that a lot better than I can, or one of my colleagues at work, Chris Castaldi, can probably talk a little bit more about that. But basically, it's not just, drag and drop and just let it run. It's been a pain in some developers' sides forever that Meta does not actually give you access to the cameras, which makes making some like more robust mixed reality experiences for Quest 3 a little bit harder to do because you do not have camera access, and that's for privacy. At one point, they actually ripped the depth sensor that's in the Quest 3 out of the Quest Pro when they released that because they had issues and concerns with privacy there. So I think that's where a lot of what he's talking about in terms of giving it camera access, but also the learning algorithm. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when he gets to the bit about the improved pass-through in version 66. This is something that takes time to like train a learning model and do that. My guess is they're already working on something like this. And I'd love to be able to put my Quest headset on and say something like, hey Meta, open Asgard's Wrath 2. Hey Meta, open the new voice chat to Robin Mulder. And be able to do things like that. Just that little addition would make it more convenient and give me a reason to keep the headset on without having to take it off to do any kind of other menial task. and limit the amount of time I'm having to use controllers, which, believe it or not, this is mostly the gaming audience that listens to this podcast, but there are people who want to use VR headsets that are not comfortable with controllers. I talk to them every day for work. I think this is something that will again become ubiquitous in almost every other headset Meta and other companies make moving forward. We'll see AI in headsets, it's just a matter of time. The next question is about augments, just asking when they're coming. If you don't know what augments are, they announced this at Meta Connect in 2023. Augments are these virtual or digital assets. I call them NFTs when I saw them. Basically, that you can, when you have a headset on, you're walking around mixed reality, you can just place these assets in your digital space. So if you're walking around, like if I were walking around my room right now, or my office, or my living room, I can add digital assets that I only see when I put the headset on. I thought it was a really neat idea, but I didn't know how useful it was going to be, other than kind of like for decorating and things like that, and setting up your own play space however you like. It's now June as I record this, so we're coming up on 9 months since Meta Connect, and augments have not come out. This is the answer about when we can expect that feature.
Yeah, so the thing we announced at Connect, we were playing with it in January, and we decided it wasn't good enough. And so it was too held back by some system architecture limitations that we had. It ended up feeling more like a toy, and it didn't really have the power that we think it needed to deliver on the promise of what it was. And so we made a tough decision there to go back to the drawing board and basically consider completely different technical architecture, starting from scratch, basically, including actually a much deeper set of changes to the system to enable what we want to build there. So I think we made the right call. We're not going to ship things we're not excited about, but it did restart the clock. And so this is going to take longer than we had hoped to deliver. And I think it's worthwhile. I think it's the right call, but that's what happened.
This is fine. It sucks to get delays on anything, but frankly, Meta has rushed some other stuff to market that wasn't ready, and we as gamers have seen many dozens of games that came to market and released and were basically in broken state. So I'd rather them take their time and release it when it's actually ready. He said the thing that I said right before I hit play on his video, basically that it felt too much like a toy, and it wanted to be something that is useful to just a wider swath of people, not just kids running around putting, like, you know, digital toys and whatever in their play spaces. It needs to be something that's useful, something that people of all ages can use. Personally, I would like to be able to pin a monitor in my play space. So for instance, if I walk into my bedroom or my office or my living room or something like that, I've got a pin monitor there where I can like pull up a YouTube playlist or something like that, just as an example, or maybe like a Spotify player. Those things would be very cool until it gets to a point where it's going to be useful for everyone and it runs correctly. And probably, I would imagine, there's a lot of overhead associated with that. If you keep your headset in mixed reality mode the whole time, it absolutely crushes your battery power. So they're probably looking at that too. Rushing the product to market gives you way more bad PR than delaying it and rolling it out when it's ready, because you can still build hype and anticipation for it if it's not ready, versus putting it out there and frankly it sucks. So good call. Totally agree. Next question is about the pass-through improvements on V66. Exact question is, how exactly did Meta pull off the remarkable Quest 3 V66 pass-through improvement? Here's his answer.
Look, we have a brilliant and hardworking team, and I take nothing away from them. One of the real keys here is you get real-world data. You know, I do get kind of annoyed. People are like, oh, you know, it's because of competitors. No, it's not. We've been working on this for a long time. Once you get real-world data, and it's not, you know, you try your best to do it before you launch a device. You simulate it with, you know, synthetic data, and you have all these labs, and you have all these dog fooders, and then you get the real-world data, and you see what the real opportunities are, and you can make some amazing improvements. And we've done it multiple times now with the Quest 3. The pass-through improvements in terms of the clarity, and now in terms of the reduced distortion with near-field objects. But mostly I just think we have a tremendous team on this who's been working on this technology for a long time. And once they saw the real world usage data come in, they saw an opportunity and they jumped on it. It's really impressive.
If you ever use the Quest 1 or like the early days of Quest 2 and then use the Quest 3 now, you notice how much improved the tracking is. The fact that there aren't tracking rings on the Quest 3 controllers now is because they were collecting data on how the controllers were used, hand positionings, everything like that from millions of users. This is another example of that. You can test things in the lab all you want, and game developers go through the same thing. You can do all the quality assurance checks that you can, but someone somewhere is going to find an obscure bug in your system. For this instance, because they did their pass-through testing in QA with, I don't know, let's say a couple dozen people, maybe a few dozen people, that's very different than like millions of people people using your headsets out in the wild and doing it in all kinds of different lighting conditions and all kinds of like ceiling heights, floor heights, the color they're painting on the walls. Sometimes there's no light, sometimes it's just natural sunlight, sometimes a dark skinned person, a light skinned person, sometimes sometimes they're looking at people moving around, sometimes there's objects not moving around, sometimes they're kids and dogs. There's all kinds of different variables that it's impossible to account for every single variable when processing data like that. So you need to get it out to the real world and collect all the data you can. That's why almost every app you ever use now at this point says, hey, can I collect your data? Not just in Meta, but literally every app from every major tech company has that in their disclaimer that they want to use your data for a quote anonymous analytics and market research. Sometimes it's not really that, and Meta's got a well-documented history of this, but this is what Andrew Bosworth is talking about. Everything from like the controller tracking and hand tracking of Quest 1 all the way through all the features in Quest 2, all of those features have been improved by people using them and data being tracked by the headset sent back to Meta, and they can pull all that together and make a better product. The same thing applies to mixed reality. They need to get it out in the field first to improve it, and that's what's happened here. And lastly, I talked about this at the beginning of the pod. Why doesn't Quest 3 come with the Elite strap? So many first impressions involve poor comfort. There's actually 2 of these videos we're going to play back to back because he broke it up into 2 different stories, and then I'll respond at the end.
I absolutely object to this premise. It is just to claim that the Quest 3 strap isn't comfortable for most people. And do you know how I know that? It's because we do incredible amounts of user research, and we've sold a lot of these things, and we see the feedback coming in. However, of course, it's not comfortable for everyone, which is why we sell the Elite strap. I get so annoyed with this because we do a tremendous amount of user research to make sure that the strap that we ship is comfortable for most people. But of course, we deal in wearables, and that means we're dealing with the huge amount of variance that is involved in human proportions. Where your ear is relative to your eyes, your nose, your forehead, the size of your brow, the size of your neck, the size of your head. There's a huge range of human variance there. And of course, for some people, one size is not going to fit all. And so we do our best to fit the majority, and then we offer alternatives for those who they don't fit. And I feel pretty good about it.
He's being a little sensitive there, but that's the first part. Here's his actual answer after he got off his soapbox and straight up answered the question.
So to answer the question is the Elite strap costs more, and that would disqualify for a lot of people their ability to purchase this device. And some people don't prefer the Elite strap, including me. I actually prefer the cloth strap. And so I'm sympathetic, I get it. And I totally understand somebody's experience of comfort. They're allowed to talk about that. But do not presume, and I see this happening on the internet all the time, do not assume that everyone has the same comfort response that you do. It's just not facts. It's just not facts.
Okay, so he got a little bit sensitive there, a little bit touchy on it. I have no doubt in my mind that they did market research and have focus groups come in and have people sit there and use the headset for, I'm going to say 30 minutes to an hour. And for your average user who used the headset for probably 30 minutes or less, because that's about the average time that people are spending in the Quest headset, you could probably get away with that strap. I get it. But for anyone who's using it for any length of time or using it every day, it quickly becomes uncomfortable unless you're using it for like sitting down cases for productivity, or if you're using the new lying down mode. If you're doing really anything active, that is just not a good strap. I couldn't stand after about 45 minutes when I did my first impressions on my live stream on Twitch. The day I got my Quest 3, I did not actually put it on except to set it up before that stream started. And by the hour in, I already had a headache because I was going through 3 hours of live testing. And he's right that everyone's head is different and your mileage may vary, but by and large, there's a reason that they offer the Elite strap, and why there's a robust third-party market from companies like Bobo, like Kiwi, like my primary sponsor, Zyber VR, because there are people who are looking to replace those straps and don't want to pay an exuberant price like over $100 for an Elite strap. He had it right that it would increase the cost of the headset itself. I like the fact that there are options and users can actually swap it out for whatever headset they deem friendly. Not everyone wants an Elite style strap. Some people prefer the Halo style strap that Bobo sells. I had a Halo style strap on my Quest 2. I didn't like the Halo on Quest 3, so I swapped it out and got an Elite strap from Zyber. I'm very happy with that. But being able to have the options is really what's important here. So even though I don't particularly agree with his reasoning, and I think he got a little bit defensive, I actually am glad that this didn't happen because it gives us options to swap these out. I have a Pico 4 sitting here right next to me, and the strap and the back pad on the strap is like this hard, mushy plastic that really doesn't feel comfortable on the back of the head. With my Quest 3, if I didn't like the strap, which I didn't, I immediately can swap it out for different options. I did a bunch of reviews on my YouTube channel of different straps and their comfort levels. So I don't really want the quest line to actually get an elite strap because I want to be able to swap it out to something I'm more comfortable with. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Live Open Daily. Thank you so much for checking it out and showing your support. Live Open Daily is available on YouTube, YouTube Music, Spotify, iHeart, and Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check out my other podcast I do monthly with a bunch of other VR content creators, the XR Remix podcast. That's available on all those other platforms as well. You can follow me on Twitch at Live Open Mic, YouTube at Live Open Mic, and on X if you want to interact with me directly. All those are at Live Open Mic. Thanks, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.